There is a story of a man who worked in a laboratory, known by many as Pipette, because of his habit of holding the thin glass tube as though it were an extension of his fingers. His life was marked by quiet diligence, but also by an invisible heaviness that followed him. Each day, he measured drops of liquid, balancing formulas with precision, yet his personal life was in chaos. Wealth seemed to slip away like vapor, no matter how much he tried to hold on. One evening, while walking home, he found himself standing in the open field as a strong wind passed through. For the first time in years, he felt as though the air itself was speaking to him, brushing away the layers of frustration, carrying away the debts and failures that had haunted him. It was in that simple encounter with the wind that he discovered a truth. What the hand cannot control, the spirit can release through the elements, and the wind becomes a servant of restoration. From that day, Pipette began to understand that the wind is not empty. It carries messages, it carries shifts, it carries cleansing. Wind has always been more than air moving across space. It is a carrier of spirit, a cleanser of heaviness, a mover of what is stagnant. In the ancient texts, wind was never random. It appeared when God wanted to part the waters, when he wanted to breathe life into dry bones, when he wanted to announce the arrival of something greater than human effort. And so when we speak of wealth restoration, we must see that poverty, debt, and financial chains are often bound by invisible cords that cannot be cut by human hands alone, but can be scattered when the wind is invited to move. Wind is movement, and movement is a sign that the stagnant has been disturbed. Wealth is not just the possession of gold or land. Wealth is energy, flow, circulation. Poverty is blockage, hindrance, suffocation. When the wind passes over a land, it lifts dust, it shifts leaves, it changes the atmosphere. In the same way, when wind is invoked spiritually, it lifts the weight of financial oppression, it scatters the dust of lack. It carries away the whispers of curses sent against one's prosperity. The man called Pipette learned that every time he stood in that field and let the breeze rush over him, he was not just feeling air. He was witnessing chains being broken in the unseen. To use wind for wealth restoration is to recognize its role as both a cleanser and a messenger. When one stands in the open and speaks words of release, the wind becomes a courier, carrying those words into realms unseen. Just as farmers rely on wind to carry seeds across soil, so can the faithful rely on wind to scatter away the remnants of spiritual poverty. Every gust that rises is a reminder that wealth does not remain locked when the air shifts, because stagnation cannot survive in movement. Wind is also symbolic of voice, breath, utterance. To whisper into the wind is to seal words into the atmosphere. When those words are words of release, words of declaration, words of wealth restoration, the wind carries them beyond human limitation. That is why in certain traditions, people stood on hills, spoke into the open sky, and believed that their cries would be carried to the throne of heaven. The wind is not deaf. It responds to alignment. It responds to faith. And so the method becomes clear. Stand where the air is free, where nothing blocks the current. Lift the words of release into the moving air, not in desperation, but in awareness that poverty and debt have no anchor when the wind is moving. As the breeze brushes against the skin, imagine it brushing away debts that clung too long, scattering curses spoken in secret places, uprooting patterns of financial shame. Just as dirt cannot resist the sweeping of a storm, so too the blockages of wealth cannot resist the cleansing of wind. Because wealth that is true is never locked in chains. It is meant to move, to circulate, to serve. When the wind comes, it challenges everything that has tried to hold wealth in captivity. It shakes the grip of envy. It scatters the dust of greed. It removes the barriers of spoken curses. That is why, when the wind of God passed through Egypt, locusts were carried away, leaving the land free to heal. In the same way, when the wind passes through a person's life, the destructive patterns are lifted, leaving room for restoration. Think of a house where dust has gathered over time. It does not matter how beautiful the furniture is. If dust remains, the beauty is hidden. A simple breeze through open windows lifts the dust, clears the air, and suddenly light rests differently on the surfaces. Wealth restoration follows the same principle. The beauty of provision, the dignity of labor, the favor of opportunity may already exist, but spiritual dust has settled on it, making it invisible. When the wind is invited, that dust is lifted, and suddenly what was hidden becomes visible again. Wind also connects territories. What is spoken in one place can be carried to another. This is why spiritual cleansing through wind has the power to bring wealth from afar. When the faithful release words into the air, the wind does not keep them still. It carries them beyond the walls, beyond the boundaries, into spaces where provision is waiting. It brings connection to people who were meant to open doors. It carries influence into the ears of decision makers. It whispers favor into the hearts of those who hold keys to opportunity. Wealth restoration is not always about receiving what was lost, but about being connected to what is being released somewhere else. Pipette learned this when he noticed that after his times of standing in the open field, small opportunities began to flow his way. A forgotten colleague reached out. An overlooked application was suddenly answered, and doors that had been closed for years began to open. He realized the wind was not just brushing against him, it was moving around him, carrying his name into places his feet had not yet walked. That is how the cleansing of wind works. It removes what should not remain and carries forward what is aligned to prosper. The strength of this cleansing lies also in surrender. You cannot hold the wind in your fist, and that is the point. Wealth restoration through wind is not about controlling, but about releasing. The human heart holds too tightly to fear, to memory, to shame, to limitation. But when one stands before the wind and lets go, the cleansing begins. It is an act of trust, saying, "Let what needs to leave be carried, and let what needs to come be drawn." In that release, the spirit aligns with the unseen current, and restoration begins to manifest. Wind has seasons, directions, and timings. Sometimes it blows from the east, carrying judgment. Sometimes from the west, bringing rain. Sometimes from the north, shifting climates. Sometimes from the south, carrying warmth. In spiritual practice, these directions carry meaning. To face the wind is to face the cleansing that comes with it. To turn with the wind is to move with opportunity. To release words into the wind is to participate in divine circulation. Wealth is restored because stagnation breaks when there is movement, and the movement of wind is constant, tireless, beyond human control. The cleansing of wind also teaches humility. Just as the greatest tree bows under a storm, so must a heart bow to the reality that wealth does not come from striving alone, but from alignment with divine flow. Pride resists, fear clings, but humility opens itself like a field and allows the wind to sweep freely. The person who learns to let the wind cleanse does not fight the process, but trusts that after the storm, the air is clearer, the atmosphere lighter, and the ground ready for new seeds. And so wealth, restoration through the cleansing of wind, is not a ritual of striving but of surrender, not a moment of desperation but of alignment. It is standing still, yet being moved. It is speaking softly, yet being heard far. It is letting go, yet gaining much. The unseen chords of lack cannot resist the currents of spirit. And when the wind passes through, restoration follows. Every arrow shot against your journey is reversed, and every step you take is under the covering of God. This is the truth that lingers when the wind has finished its work of cleansing. For wealth to be restored, it is not only about what you receive, but also about what is overturned on your behalf. Arrows of poverty, shame, stagnation, and frustration that once flew silently into your path do not land where they were sent. The wind of the Spirit lifts them, turns them, and sends them back to their source. This reversal is not by human strength, but by divine covering. For when you walk under that covering, no arrow can pierce, no curse can stand, and no barrier can endure. The conclusion of this journey with the wind teaches that wealth restoration is both spiritual and practical. Spiritually, the wind removes and scatters. Practically, the wind makes room for opportunities that were hidden to emerge. A person who has been cleansed by the wind walks differently, lighter, freer, more expectant. The heaviness that weighed down decisions is gone. The fog that clouded clarity has lifted, and what once felt like an endless cycle of lack is broken. To live under this reality is to live with assurance that nothing can silently sabotage the steps you are meant to take. The imagery of arrows is important because arrows are silent weapons. They are launched from a distance, sometimes in secret, often without warning. Poverty works like that, showing up in subtle sabotages, quiet losses, unseen delays. But when the wind is invited, those arrows are exposed. They cannot travel where the air is moving violently. They are turned back by the current. Your journey, then, is no longer marked by silent sabotage, but by open favor. Each step becomes a testimony that what was meant for harm has been reversed, and what was meant to hinder has been removed. As you walk under the covering of God, you no longer live by chance. You live by assurance. The wind reminds you daily that you are not alone, that your wealth is not at the mercy of hidden enemies, and that your destiny is not subject to secret sabotage. Instead, your life moves in rhythm with divine flow. Every step you take carries evidence that the air has been cleared, that the arrows have been turned, and that restoration has already begun. And now, as we draw this reflection into an outro, let it rest in your heart that wind is not just an invisible force outside of you. It is a living testimony that God uses the unseen to shift the scene. Just as the breeze you cannot hold still can change the landscape before your eyes, so too the Spirit moves in ways you cannot control to shift your financial path, to scatter your burdens, and to carry your name into places of favor. The cleansing of the wind is not a one-time act. It is a lifestyle of walking under the open sky with the assurance that restoration is your portion. So as you leave this moment of reflection, remember this. You are not bound by the past. You are not chained by lack. And you are not vulnerable to every arrow shot in secret. You are covered. The wind has spoken. The wealth that was locked is being released. The heaviness that was hidden is being carried away. And the opportunities that seem distant are being drawn near. Walk forward with your head lifted, for the covering of God goes with you. And as we close this session, I invite you to carry this truth with you into your daily steps. Every time you feel the wind, let it remind you that unseen movements are at work for your restoration. Each breeze is a sign that God has not forgotten you, that the covering is still strong, and that no arrow can determine your destiny. You are walking into restoration, not by striving, but by alignment, not by fear, but by trust. If this reflection has touched your heart, take a moment to stay connected. Subscribe, share, and join this journey as we continue to uncover the hidden truths of spiritual cleansing and restoration. Let this space be where you return for strength, for clarity, and for encouragement as you rise above every obstacle. You are not walking alone. The Spirit goes before you. The covering of God rests upon you, and the wind will continue to carry away what does not belong while drawing near what has always been meant for you. This is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a renewed journey. Keep listening, keep watching, keep walking. The covering is sure, the arrows are reversed, and the restoration of your wealth is already unfolding. Until we meet again, carry this truth in your spirit. Every arrow is turned back, and every step you take is guarded by the wind of God.